Hi, everyone. This is Lynn Davenport and Mary Lowe with another episode of Tick Ed. And today we are joined by Tiffany Boyd, and she is the host of Free Your Children, freeyourchildren.com. And I've been on her show and so happy for her to come on here. She and I have been collaborating on the education reform that's happening in Tennessee, and I share with her what's happening in Texas. And this mostly to do with school choice when we've had other discussions. So we decided Mary and I wanted to have her on and talk about this controversial new appointment for Trump's deputy education secretary, and that is Penny Schwinn. And he got her name wrong. He called her Peggy, which I don't know if that's some sort of cybernetic something. I don't know what's going on, but everyone, they chimed back, no, it's Penny. And Penny, her last name is Schwinn, which we think is funny because she peddles her way all around the state. She usually lasts about 1 year with each job. She blows everything up, causes controversy, and then she moves on to the next state. When there's all this evidence out there of the controversies around her, they still keep hiring her, and it's mostly red states, even though she's a Democrat. And when she was in the Texas Education Agency, she was pushing some Democrat policies. So welcome, Tiffany. How are you? And what you got for us today?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me on. It's a pleasure to be on your show today, and I'm so excited to connect with both you lovely ladies and your viewers as well.
So,
Well,
Tiffany, I woke up in the middle of the night, Friday night or early Saturday morning, and I saw your post.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to know, how did you find out? Because that was released late. So, what was like, how did you find out so quickly that appointment happened? Because you were Johnny on the spot and got that out there on social media. And then, of course, I was awake in the middle of the night, picked it up, sent it to Lynn, and away we went. And it has been pretty amazing. There are so many people that do not like this woman and know how bad she is for education. I mean, this is not two small groups in two southern states complaining. This is major. So how'd you find out?
Well, I don't sleep much. So there's that. When I founded, Free Your Children, originally it was founded because our homeschool community in our state of Tennessee had grown, to a huge group of parents because COVID had happened. So, originally I started out with a very small homeschool support group here in Middle Tennessee where I'm located. And what we did was I served specifically then in a capacity where I just help parents navigate out of the public school system. And then we quickly saw as time progressed, because I was a former, tenured public school teacher before my husband made the decision that we were going to take the leap into the homeschooling world. And funny enough, I came in kicking and screaming because I'd been indoctrinated, the same way that most teachers have been indoctrinated along the way. But it was really a catalyst for me to unlearn everything that I had been taught about education and to really realize that, things were much worse than I had suspected, even though when I was serving in that capacity as a public school teacher, I was questioning a lot that was going on, which, landed me in trouble often because they don't like it when you ask questions. Right. So parents were coming to me, through the years, please help me navigate out of the school system and begin our, homeschooling journey. And I was doing that. That's what primarily I started out on this path doing. And then I created a homeschool group. And then for 19 years, we were just hosting field trips. We were coordinating co-ops. I was teaching classes, all free of charge, just volunteering. And other parents were coming alongside me and offering their specialized skills and services and time and talents. And we did that for a long time. And then I'd always been following some pioneers, I would say, in education that were fighting against Common Core and some other policies in Tennessee. But we really started seeing these agendas ramp up in the state of Tennessee. And we started thinking we really probably should get more engaged, because a lot of homeschool families, and to be quite frank with you, just a lot of individuals, across the board, just kind of think that their civic duty has been fulfilled if they just vote for the person that has the right letter behind their name.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes.
We got
So
that
then
same problem.
so we thought we probably really need to be paying attention. So then we made a collective effort to really start taking our families to the Capitol and teach our children about how government in Tennessee works, how bills become a law, and really start educating them and the parents that didn't know and the other members of the community. This is really what we need to be watching. And it started at first with the bill that they were running, where what they were wanting to do was replace our old education funding formula with a new formula called the TISA. And when I started doing some research on that, I quickly realized that that was the gateway into school choice. And so we knew, because it comes with a lot less accountability than our old funding formula. So we took our kids and our homeschool group, went up to the Capitol. Of course, by this point, we'd grown by like 246% because of COVID. And so our numbers had amassed at that point close to 1,000 families that we were serving in Middle Tennessee. So we went up in opposition to that particular piece of legislation and asked them to vote no. They didn't listen. They passed the bill. Now we have the TISA, which was the Trojan horse leading to all this school voucher scam that now we're dealing with in the state of Tennessee. So around that same time, at that point in time, Penny Schwinn was our education commissioner in the state of Tennessee.
Okay, hold right there. So Penny was your commissioner, your education commissioner, superintendent, different.
Yes.
When TISA passed,
Correct.
and was she driving TISA?
She was very much behind the push to help funnel, this new initiative into the state of Tennessee.
Okay, so my question is, so let me apologize, because obviously, Penny came from Texas.
Yes.
And our education system is a big proponent of passing the trash within the state. And now apparently we've done it outside of the state, and we've sent you Penny Schwinn. I don't really know how you got Penny Schwinn, but before I find out how you got Penny Schwinn, Lynn, would you just tell everybody what Penny did here that put her, I believe she's not in a good relationship with Mike Morath, because I believe she was implicating him a little bit. So what happened there? Because she was confronted with illegal behavior in Texas. So what was that?
Yeah, well, so they are on the same team, but they didn't get along, is the problem with Penny and Mike Morath. So when Mike Morath was appointed by the governor, he appointed he restructured the TEA, and then he appointed a number of Teach for America deputies, so underneath him. And in addition to that, he had Cara Ballou and AJ Crable. So I'm going to share this because
and Penny is Teach for America, correct?
Penny is a Teach for America alumni. Now, Morath is not, but he was on the board and he's a proponent. So a lot of times that gets confused when people are talking about Morath. They think he's TFA. Okay, can you see this IEP analysis project timeline? Okay, so why this is important is this came in 2017, but Penny was appointed so Morath was appointed by the governor in 2016, sworn in, and then he brought Penny in after that. So the IEP analysis project was a special needs data mining project that was they were entering into contracts. Penny steered no bid contracts to these companies, and there were contracts embedded within the SpedX deal. So it wasn't just the TFA guy, Richard Nye Corey, and SpedX, his startup out of Atlanta. And the idea was that they were going to sell special needs data from the individual ISDs to SpedX. And that's why they call it the IEP analysis project. So I don't know if this is big enough to see. Let's see if I can expand this.
It's not big enough to see.
I can blow it up.
But we'll post it on our website, and perhaps Tiffany wants to have it as well, so that people can look at this. And 2017, by the way, there it is.
Yeah.
There
I'll
was a
include this
lot of
link.
other very bad things that were happening that changed the course of our public education system and the experience that children and teachers had. It was a lot was set in motion in 2017. So this is a significant time to look at in Texas as far as the decline and the destruction of education. And so go back to Penny. So basically, she sells the special education students data.
Yeah, she sells the data. She gets busted for it, and there was a state auditor's report on this. So that I will include the link to that as well. That proved that she steered the contracts. She gave preferential treatment to vendors within that, and we've seen that pattern as she goes to other states. And she's steered contracts to her husband's company, the New Teacher Project, which is TNTP. Was that found in Tennessee or?
I think that what people who were reporting on her once she was hired in Tennessee were referring, writing articles and trying to shine the light on exactly what you're talking about here, Lynn. Her claim to fame in Tennessee, I'm going to share with you, was involving a policy called the Wellbeing Child Checks that she was behind. And so that was the kicker for most people in Tennessee who had not been paying attention as to what was, going on here. That was really the catalyst to, we have a problem. Houston, we have a problem.
Yeah. And that, so I think that has been what I've seen the most on Twitter is outcry from the Tennessee moms and parents saying she's bad. She tried to mask our children. She was trying to do the medical tyranny, essentially. And then the home visits, which the idea behind that is, we're just going to check on your kid, make sure everything's okay, make sure, they get the supports they need. They do that kind of, some of the principals will do that in our neighborhood. And it sounds all good, but really the government has no business coming into your home because we know that they're looking for other things. The same thing on the devices. When the children are on the devices, we've heard of cases where teachers are checking out, what's going on in the room and if they need to report that your parents are doing this or that. Well, that goes well beyond just being concerned about the child's well-being. Penny thinks that she's from the government and that she knows better.
Yes.
And she is from the government and she does not know better.
Yes.
So, okay. Real quick, do either one of you know, I've picked up that there was, that she was found guilty of a self-dealing contract and that she was outed for this self-dealing contract in a court. Is that accurate, or am I reading something into some things that, because this is not my area.
Well, the Department of Ed, I'll speak to that. So the whistleblower at the TEA, who was the special ed director, who's the one that busted them for this no bid contract, she went all the way. It was a federal complaint, so it went all the way to Betsy DeVos's office back when Trump was in office, and it actually ruled in Dr. Laurie Cash's favor, and Penny was implicated in that whistleblower complaint. So that is a federal complaint. This is why she cannot be confirmed for this position, because she was found guilty and Laurie was awarded. But the problem is sovereign immunity, which Mary and I deal with all the time with our local ISDs and with our teachers and with our
every government agency. Every government agency.
Right. So the sovereign immunity kept Laurie from actually being paid out for what she was owed. And so that was probably what you're thinking of. There may be another case that where she was in a lawsuit, but I don't know specifically.
Okay, so here's my question, because Tiffany, you may I've got a specific question for you, but I about Penny, and how you ended up with her in Tennessee. But my question is, because a lot of what she's implementing goes back to, Betsy DeVos and Jeb Ed. And so, and then you just mentioned, because I'm sitting here processing all of this and I'm thinking to myself, how did Trump want her the first time? Betsy DeVos must have wanted her.
Yeah, so, and I'm going to speak to that when I tell you the history of how you wound up with her in Tennessee.
Okay, so go ahead and tell us that, please. How did you get her?
Yeah, it's an interesting story. I have contacts from Capitol Hill that contact me regularly. And so when this broke, and I shared the information, late at night that this had been announced and that this was really bad and that, this was going to be devastating, not only for tech, like it had been for Texas and Tennessee, but now we're looking at this, from a national standpoint.
Right.
So after I shared that post that you were speaking about that really blew our Twitter up or our X account up because we are new to that platform. We had the account a while, but we didn't spend much time there ever. We started on Facebook, and that's where we had organically grown our following, was over on our Free Your Children Facebook page. And everyone kept telling me, you really have to make sure that you're, putting effort in over on X because that's the, place that you need to be to get the word out. And so we had started attempting to do that more. And when that happened, of course, we dropped that information over on X. And then when we did, it really took off. And so my contacted me and said, I know that you've shared this, but I would like to give you some information about how we wound up with her in Tennessee. And so what they shared with me was that our former governor, Bill Haslam, and Bill Gates had a meeting with our governor, Lee.
It is Gates.
It is Gates.
Trying to speculate. Okay,
yes.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I knew it.
So Bill Gates was interested in making a multi-million-dollar gift to Tennessee education. And so at that point in time, they both recommended that our Governor Lee hire Penny Schwinn. Ugh. And then adding on to that, Bill Gates and Betsy DeVos called Lee and urged him to hire her. Now, while this was happening, Betsy DeVos was the Secretary of Education for President Trump from 2017 to 2021. Tennessee hired Penny Schwinn January 17th, 2019, and then she resigned from her position here in Tennessee in 2023.
Wow.
So that's our sources tell us that those were the individuals that were responsible for urging our governor to hire her in this position to begin with.
Wow. The problem, we've looked at what's happening in Texas, and we identify, obviously we go, this senator is bad, this House rep is bad because they're making money off of the data. But if they're not making money off of the data, they're making money off of setting up the broadband to go into our rural areas. And I know Tennessee has a lot of rural areas and small.
And so Penny has a connection that our administration, our Governor Lee administration, and Penny Schwinn, she has a connection to that and to utilizing the rural areas to advance this agenda. So I don't know how much you ladies want me to go into this, but the Wellbeing Child Check is really what exploded all of this, and in Tennessee. And why so many people in Tennessee were outraged about what she was doing. Well, what happened is that homeschool group that I had founded, we had a member of that group who had not lived in Tennessee all that long. He was a realtor. He had a client from another state that was interested in purchasing property here in Tennessee. And they had the fortitude to go over on the Tennessee Department of Education website and check out what was going on, in education before they moved here. And they stumbled upon the Wellbeing Child Check initiative that had been added to the Tennessee Department of Education. And so this individual contacted me and said, do you know what this is? And I said, no, it's never been there before. I have no clue. So I immediately jumped into action and started notifying other organizations, which then notified attorneys. And we really instituted a major call to action within the homeschool community and encouraged them to call their legislators. Senator Janice Bowling right now will tell you that we actually shut the phone lines down at the Capitol because we just flooded them, so much in opposition to this. But the reason why is because not only were they planning on checking on children who had been enrolled in school, because this was during COVID, okay? They wanted well-being child checks on all children ages birth to 18. And so thanks thankfully, we downloaded the original Wellbeing Child Check Task Force Initiative Plan that had been uploaded to the Tennessee Department of Education in our group, in our local homeschool group. And so when she made her when the announcement was made that Trump had appointed her, I quickly went in to see if we still had that documentation. It's a 26-page document. And it goes into great detail. I don't believe that you can still access it from the TDOE. I think that you get a 404, notification that link is broken. However,
there is something on the website that said it talks about Penny Schwinn, the task force and all that.
Yes. And so the original document, what we did was we send out, For Your Children sends out a newsletter regularly, not just once a month, whenever we feel like we need to, educate people or warn them about something that's going on, we'll send out a newsletter. So once we received the information that Penny Schwinn had received the appointment from Trump, we drafted a newsletter and attached that 26-page document to it for those that had subscribed so that they could go in and read it for themselves. But, as Lynn pointed out, there's always a bigger and more nefarious.
Stop right there.
Right here.
Yes.
See that?
Yeah. Stop right there. Okay. So
see the communities and schools?
Communities and schools is how it presents itself in Texas. And there is a major, they were collecting data. So one point
they make it clear. They make it clear in the 26-page document that they will be collecting data, and they go into specifics about the data that they plan on collecting. They want a roster of private schools, public schools, charter schools, homeschools, children too young to be enrolled in school, children not enrolled in school, and homebound. And if you look and you read through that 26-page document, they also explicitly explain that this is not just for the children, it's for well-being checks to be performed on the families that they are residing with as well.
Yeah, notice the virtual school models here.
Unbelievable. So CPS in Texas would be the agent that would do that more here. But they don't have, we should probably be watching. They may be expanding to that capacity. But in Texas, they're doing all of this in the school with the children who are enrolled in the public school. But now they've launched an initiative to mandate really that they capture the students from birth.
Yes.
And it's easy to do that with the very low income.
Yes.
Because it's free. And then the other thing that is happening is that with the voucher, what people don't realize, you see, and maybe because of the pushback that y'all did, Penny, that Texas is going, we have a group of parents that are going to recognize this and they're going to push back on this. So we're going to have to do this through the back door. Well, and the back door is the voucher or virtual ed.
Yes. And there's
I'm pulling that up real quick. Sorry, we keep talking.
That's okay.
About each other.
That's all right.
Delay.
There is also, I had another source reach out to me about a condition of a well-being child check being put in place in their voucher legislation. So families that choose to utilize the voucher program will have to be in agreement to a well-being child check. And so, yes, you're right. This is exactly, what they plan to do. And it even went into detail about how that it was preferred to talk to each child as privately as possible.
Again, they're doing that in our schools in Texas.
Correct.
And Tennessee they're also doing it with T-Chat. Yes. I don't know if y'all have T-Chat or not, but they're doing that with T-Chat. And in Texas, T-Chat can have 3 conferences with the child before the parent is ever notified. And all of this is an overreach of government. And the thing that I'm afraid people are not going to realize about the danger of Penny Schwinn is that they're going to say, well, it's only special ed and it was an isolated incident. Because that is so well documented. But what you have documented is way more egregious than the data. And again, it's not unique to Texas and it's not unique to Tennessee. No. Our government, all of our governments, look, they don't come up with their bills in their own little states.
Right.
They all go to one place, ALEC or TPPF
Yes.
or
Yes.
someone else. Most of them ALEC.
They're
Mhm.
cut and paste bills. Yes.
Right.
Is for
And
sure.
and then the big money comes, AT&T for broadband,
Mhm.
and in this case, Gates. The big money comes. We're going to give this to you. It's the grant. It's the bribe. We're going to give this to you so you'll do blah blah blah. And to use our governor's, I don't know, what do you want to call him, chief of communications, that all they need is the plate, and then they'll load it up with the whole enchilada. If they
Yes.
can just get the bill passed with the plate, then
Right.
they'll put the rest of it on there.
Yes.
And once that's done, you have no privacy. You have no individual rights. There is nothing constitutional about any of this. It is an absolute overreach of government. And I know people are not going to feel comfortable with Trump being sworn in and then us releasing something saying, he is not who he says he is if he advances putting people with these kind of agendas in place.
Yes, it's concerning. And you spoke to something earlier about this being an advancement of mental health. And I wanted to expound upon that. And this is directly related to what Penny Schwinn did. So this task force that you referred to that was created around these well-being child checks, well, they had members that were assigned to that task force. Well, there was one individual, Janet Ayers, who sat on the Wellbeing Child Check Task Force, and Lee, our Governor Lee, teamed up with her foundation to bring more mental health professionals into our schools via the governor's Rural Health Foundation. So they were using this initiative to be able to reach the rural communities that you mentioned earlier, all communities. And the governor's Rural Health Education Foundation is a Tennessee nonprofit with William Alec Richardson as the registered agent. And William Alec Richardson is the senior advisor to the governor and director of external affairs in Tennessee. So this was connected to so much more than just, what they wanted to lead the people to believe, that this was just a way to check on all of the little children who the schools had been shut down and they had, had to go home and they couldn't come to school and they were cut off from all of their support services. But it really had a more nefarious agenda.
Yes.
And then additionally, it specifically said in that 26-page document that even if it was found that there were needs that needed to be addressed, there was no guarantee that services would even be provided.
Of course not. It was only so they could create a portfolio on the family. Correct. It was only so they could set up an ESG, a baseline for the ESG.
Yes.
So they could determine what.
No, it's not the ESG.
Yeah,
it is the node. The children are literally nodes in the network. It's a superorganism of connectivity. And during the pandemic, we set up Operation Connectivity through the governor. And one thing that they are really ramping up with that broadband is it's Gates and Zuckerberg. But I want to go to this. I want to share this because it's the Gates. Oh crud!
Honestly, I'm super sick at my stomach when I see, and I hope that Trump is actually keeping his enemies closer. And he realizes that all of these technology people are literally his enemies. They are literally his personal enemies, and they are the enemies to freedom and liberty.
Okay, can we let's go back to the Gates thing, because we know that Trump met with Gates. They met for hours, and Gates was surprisingly, energized about possibly achieving this global health milestone. He also talked a lot about innovation. They talked about HIV and we know what happened during the pandemic with the biosecurity state and the whole medical tyranny that ensued, and vaccines. And this kind of ties into we were shut down in Texas, and our governor, we have a Republican governor, but we had no rights in Texas. And so the Gates meeting is interesting because we have, for decades, we have been receiving Gates money, and he bought the PTA. He bought now he doesn't go directly to the schools. He does it through the grants. It comes through Educate Texas, which is a public-private partnership. So they brought us the early college high schools. But this is important that if you got that intel about Penny, that was directly where I went, because I was trying to figure out, how did this happen? And we have to get the breadcrumbs. We have to piece all these things together, because we're not privy. We don't have a seat at the table.
Right.
So Trump brings in these technocrats, Gates and Musk and Bezos, and where are they all focused? They're focused on the children. And during the pandemic, we have school districts that actually contracted with Musk to have satellites over them. And Gates invested in Crown Castle, which is where we got our Wi-Fi hotspots for Dallas ISD and Richardson ISD during the pandemic.
The whole state.
Well, but that specifically was Crown Castle and a deal. But Gates invested $650 million in Crown Castle before the pandemic, so he knew he knew months before the pandemic that we would be sheltered at home, and the children would need that. So that's the thing, is that. And Trump was not a friend to us when it comes to the vaccines, because he brought us Operation Warp Speed, and he advanced the agenda of Fauci, despite it looking like there was friction. He still legitimized Fauci, and Fauci, of course, was just pardoned. So okay. So back to Penny. So with the Penny appointment in multiple red states, and now the appointment with Trump, if there is the Gates agenda, I just want to skim over that really quickly, that the Gates agenda has been merit pay for the teachers. There's a lot to do with the corporate reform of teacher pay. And so they create a competitive situation where the teachers have to then do well on the accountability system, but they don't choose the students that they're given. So it turns it into a corporate model.
So I just want to skip beyond all of the linkages right here real quick and just say, look, the bottom line is it's privatization, because if it's privatized, Gates can very easily flip a switch and have everything he wants. It's the messiness of the public owning it that keeps it from being everything from being captured all in one fell swoop. And so I think that it's really important for people to understand that, because it has been a driver. I mean, there are many, many reasons why we're opposed to a voucher or an ESA. That's not what this TIC-Ed is about, but people need to understand that all of these things are lining up to point to the complete control, the complete capture. And it's not just about SpedEx children. It is about every child. It is about their character, their mental health. It's about their personal thoughts. It is about separating them from the family. It really is.
Absolutely.
It is a destruction of the family. And, the children do not belong to the government. And that is Penny Schwinn's model, is to move the kids out of belonging to a family and into belonging to a government. And
absolutely. Was she involved in the Grow Your Own initiative in Texas? Because that was another one of her huge initiatives here in the state of Tennessee, was the Grow Your Own initiative. And the Grow Your Own initiative, this is what it states, that it is a collective of practitioners, educators, union members, policymakers, researchers, and allies focused on creating a national model for recruiting and retaining diverse community-grounded teachers of color. The program is committed to creating long-term, local diverse teachers who dismantle institutional racism and work towards educational equity, which again is CRT. So in the state of Tennessee, we have supposedly outlawed CRT, but it is very much still alive and well.
Right.
All that was for was to bolster the resumes of the legislators that sponsored that bill so that they could then say, look what we've done. We've made this illegal, but it is still very much alive and well. So here she was in the state that says that CRT is not happening, that it's gone away, that it is illegal, training teachers on the very principles of CRT to then go into the classroom. And so in Tennessee, the model apprentices were compensated from the sustainable federal and workforce funds. Even though they were funded by the Tennessee Department of Education, they were completely unwilling to share their annual budgets, and they weren't, willing. There was no transparency there whatsoever. So there were a number of news sources that reported stories on the Grow Your Own initiative that she was involved in. I think Lynn may have one pulled up now discussing that. I think the Tennessee Star also shared some stories about the Grow Your Own initiative, but this was definitely not good for Tennessee and continued to usher in the CRT narrative in our state.
Okay, so in Texas, I can't answer whether or not she was, but the same thing happened here.
Mm-hmm.
They said they were going to get rid of 1605, and I think the fox is still sly no matter what color his fur is, and what they did in Texas literally amounts to House Bill 1605, where they created their own instructional material, and they got everybody to go along with it by saying that it had the Bible in it, which is it is such blasphemy. It's unbelievable. It is total blasphemy. But, I guess what I would say about that is that, there's so much lipstick being put on the pig here. We still got one pig, and that pig is all the same, no matter whether it's in Tennessee. And we've got people that are in common and that are able to move from state to state. And now it's the federal level doing the same thing, that there is a group of people that are driving what's happening in education. And as much as we may think we are stopping it, we are not. They are going underground and still moving quite well up the chain of command and authority, and getting more and more control over our education systems. And I'm not sure, how we stop it in each state. But yes, the same thing is happening, and they just hide what they do. But we have to be sly like a fox too, and we have to call them out. And one of the things that I know that Lynn and I are doing here and have been doing for over 2 years is saying, get the kids off the device. Mm-hmm. That there's so many medical reasons to get the kids off the device. Plus, there's no return academically from a learning acumen. It's all just about profit for oligarchs and companies and privatizers. And there is nothing in it for the taxpayer or for the child or the family. Okay. For a child to be on a device at school. And what kind of solution are you suggesting? And what are you asking people in your community to do?
Regarding education as a whole across the state, across the nation, I would tell everyone that's listening to this to get involved and educate themselves and do their research. Take some time to figure out who is behind this agenda and who's pushing the narratives in their state, and then start having conversations with your legislators at a state level and even a local level within, your current district where you live within your state. I think it's important. There are so many people, again, as I've said earlier, when we started this interview, is that most people, what I have found from doing this is most people simply do not know. I'm hearing people say over and over again, well, it's all going to be taken care of because Trump is going to defund the U.S. Department of Education. So that tells me right there that they do not understand where the money is coming from and how this works. I happen to agree with a friend who shared her assessment with me regarding how they think this is all going to play out. And I agree with her wholeheartedly that he may superficially claim that he is defunding the U.S. Department of Education, but I think what will happen is it will just be restructured. We know that the Department of Workforce and Labor is fully invested in creating a global network of workers. So I look to see those departments absorb what the Department of Education has been doing. You know, there's money flowing back to the states from so many different federal departments. The Department of Transportation is involved in that as well. You know, the Department of Defense. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. And so Health and Human Services is directly involved. You know, they've gotten involved in the multi-tiered systems that all of the states are using to implement the identifying of at risk with this multi-tiered model. The National Governors Association put out a playbook, for Pete's sake, specifically talking about all these initiatives in terms of mental health and how they were going to bring in, you know, stakeholders and people in the community and the faith-based community to help better identify these at-risk children. Well, we know that with Every Student Succeeds Act, every child is considered at risk. So the only way to ever, in my opinion, gain any traction in steering this ship in another direction would be, first off, you're going to have to repeal federal law, you know, starting with the Every Student Succeeds Act. That's going to have to stop. And
WIOA.
Yes. And then, you know, we have issues with FERPA as well when Obama reauthorized that. So this is such a multifaceted machine, and they've done it on purpose. And they've done it while we've all been sitting around allowing it to happen because people were unengaged. Maybe they didn't know where to look. Maybe they didn't understand all of this. So one of the fundamental goals of Free Your Children is to try to educate people across the nation on what's really going on and to tie other people like Lynn and yourself that are in other states together in one spot where we can just say, look, this is not just happening in Tennessee. See all these people from all across the nation that I have interviewed that have issued the exact same warning, because again, you're right. States are not operating, you know, off on an island unto themselves. You know, they are very much what happens in one state is going to affect other states. And it used to be a joke when I was a public school teacher teaching here in rural Middle Tennessee, because I taught at a very rural school for the majority of my teaching career. And it was a running joke that whatever happens in California will be repeated in Tennessee, no matter if it fails or not. And, you know, we're a red state. We are a rural red state. And it's happening then. It's happening even more now because of technology, they have been able to implement their agenda now at warp speed. You know, they've created interoperable databases. So now data that's harvested can be shared with, you know, whoever's buying it and whoever has an incentive, you know, in this globalization of our children and of our nation.
But Tiffany, here's the problem with the data. In Texas, the books are cooked. And the books are cooked, and that's the data. The data is cooked. It is totally manipulated, and it is totally being controlled by the government. So one of the things that I really like, that I'd like to point out, and I tend to go here, like Lynn always beats on. She'll always bring up Morath and make Morath the problem, but often I go to.
It's not just Morath; it's Morath and the Commit Partnership, funded by the Gates Foundation, who runs the state, and so it's an indirect billionaire boys game. They use these puppets, so it's you can get rid of Morath and you can bring in some other guy who will do their bidding. It's and you're saying with Penny, it doesn't matter.
That's why when we tried to get rid of Morath, it was like we were going to have that conversation, but who would they take that we could recommend? You know, it's like, how could you find somebody that they would approve of that would not be, frankly, corrupted or take the golden carrot that's being dangled at the expense of children?
You're really at the point, because that's the pushback. The little bit of pushback I have received have been from people who are diehard Trump supporters and who have said over and over, you know, to me, would you rather have Kamala Harris.
That is a false dilemma fallacy.
Mhm.
It's a logical fallacy. If this, then this. No,
Yes.
what we're saying is we want somebody who's qualified.
Yes.
I'm great with, I mean, we have.
Yeah. And my point with this is that, the fact of the matter is, if it's a globalist agenda, we should be shining the light on it. And what we should really be asking ourselves is, why are people who are aligned with the globalist agenda being placed in positions of power? And why are they seemingly the only ones that make it to the ballot to begin with, where we are resulted in choosing, the better choice, which may not necessarily be the choice? And I'm not saying that in terms of President Trump. What I'm saying is, we have resigned ourselves to just saying this is all we have to choose from. No matter if it's local elections or state elections, we have a huge problem with that in Tennessee. It always has come down to this: when you're choosing who you're going to elect, you're choosing the lesser of two evils. So I have said over and over again, why is that the only ones that wind up on the ballot?
Because the oligarchs who are in favor of the globalist agenda, who think that they are going to save their neck and they are going to be in power in the one world system, they are picking who they will allow on the ballot. And that's who we get. And until we, the people, are willing to say, look, they took money from so and so, I'm not gonna vote for them.
Right.
Until we are willing to get people elected, like in Texas, there's big lie about what this election meant. No, it didn't mean anything. It meant that the right on right, and there was millions of dollars spent on negative advertising, and that the Delphi technique worked, and people believed a false narrative in spite of the facts. And many times the facts were never even brought out. Right. But I mean, again, it's a shame that organizations like Moms for Liberty and Moms for America and CDF, which quickly had funding to create a national connectivity, and it was all a fake front of AstroTurf. And they have a national connectivity set up among people, and they could put truth out there if they were willing to really be who they said they were, which was people who were concerned about kids and families and Constitution. There is nothing constitutional about what is going on there. And these people all have been shown the connectivity of the agenda, and they're silent. And parents and families should 100% push back on those big national organizations who are leading them to slaughter. They really are. And I hate to say that, because I know I'll get a lot of pushback on it, but people have really got to, as you said,
push back for what?
They have got to push back on these big organizations.
No, you're going to get pushback for what?
For saying that Moms for Liberty, Moms for America, and CDF created this national network, and then they're not doing what they said they were going to do, which was stand up for the Constitution. They're not.
Well, so much of this is local. These are local issues, and we look to our national leaders, and we have this, we call it hopium. Okay, now Trump is in office and everything's going to be fine. I see that at the local level as a precinct chair, and what's happening.
But Moms for Liberty has a national audience. Okay, they do have a national audience. And
my point is that they're not going to be helpful if they're not focused on the local, and they're not. They like the marquee.
But that's what they founded themselves on.
I know, and we don't need that. We don't need that. We actually need.
We don't need that.
And I know they want local chapters individually.
I think it's a good it's worth pointing out that our organization, Free Your Children, with the work that we have consistently tried to do, the level of censorship we have received has come primarily from Republicans, conservative Republicans.
100%. Yeah.
That did not want the messages, and we bring the receipts. I'm not just some lady that's out here, in the social media world, just making random statements about whatever I think may be of interest to whomever may be listening. I have children that I'm still actively homeschooling. I have a lot on my plate, but I have made this one of my primary, things that I spend a large majority of my time on, because I know and understand that this is it. This is it for true educational autonomy, for true freedoms, for true parental rights, and true constitutional rights, with what is going on in terms of education. And as I have been traveling around offering seminars in other states and meeting people and people contacting me, I hear over and over and over again, I had no clue that this was going on.
Yeah. One of our mottos is they don't know what we don't tell them. And that's not because we're being arrogant like we know. It's just that we're doing the research.
Yes.
And we're trying to get the research out there. And that's why we wanted to have you on, so you could really tell the story of what was happening. One, thank you for being so quick on that. And two, for telling the whole story, because it does show that this is a national agenda.
Yes.
And it does also point to that, Betsy DeVos is a problem, and Bill Gates is a problem, and Penny Schwinn is a problem. And those people, and anybody in any form of a relationship or in any business arrangement with those people, should not be allowed near education decisions whatsoever. They should not be given a voice whatsoever.
And my hope with all of this is that because of all the pushback this Penny Schwinn appointment has received, is that President Trump will listen.
Well, I hear he is. I do hear that.
Okay, Mary, talk about that real quick. Just briefly share what you're hearing about that, the message that they're getting from Florida and his chief of staff.
Yeah, they feel a little bit under pressure, and they wish we would hush. Let's put it that way. They wish we would hush. So I would say, keep on, bring it more. More people get louder. Yes. And there's other people, John Rich. I mean, the number of people who are helping.
Well, he lives in Tennessee as well.
Yes,
so
yes.
He has retweeted, a lot of the same posts from people in Tennessee who have been sharing the warning, about what's happening here. What I would ask is that we have Free Your Children has a heavy presence at the Capitol. We did last legislative session. We will be there this legislative session. What we're asking is for all of the individuals that are retweeting and that are sounding the alarm will show up. Because what really makes an impact is when you actually show up, because then they can't stuff it under the rug. When you're there, it's an opportunity, for photo ops and to put the pressure on them, and they have to look you in the eye, and you can really hold them accountable for, whichever piece of legislation or initiative it is that they're trying to, push down the throats of families. And I think that you're right, that we need to keep the heat up. I have had a number of people reach out to me, and say, I would like to send, some of your information to some of, Trump's contacts. And I would love nothing more than to be able to have a conversation with, someone, that is in that arena, to say to them, look, this is bad. This is why we're warning about that. Someone sent me an article about Penny Schwinn's tenure in Florida, and apparently she was fired in Florida as well under a spending scandal there. Yeah. So I shared that information over on my Free Your Children Facebook page, and I know that when she was in her position here in Tennessee, she had a huge turnover rate of employees that were working under her, because they, I'm assuming, felt like the climate working under her was not a good climate and one in which they wished to remain in. And so there was a huge turnover, and they actually hired someone else to come in and try to bridge the gap and undo the damage. and be, I guess, a liaison for Penny.
I want to play, but I know we're trying to wrap it up, but I want to play this because it speaks to the hypocrisy. So if the administration is going to get rid of DEI, and in Texas, they say the same thing. Oh, we're going to end CRT and DEI.
Yes.
And they keep appointing people who actually advance that agenda. So here's Penny.
My core values really center on equity, integrity for all, no matter what. My core values really center on equity, integrity for all, no matter what.
And
my
that's
core
the
values
thing about
really center on equity, integrity for
well,
all.
and I think she was easily
equity,
people hungered for her. Megan, shut up.
Sorry, you're on a different screen. Just stop talking for just a second.
Equity, integrity for all, no matter what.
Shoot.
My core values really center.
Okay, make that go away. So we're novices, you can tell. We're just in the
Trust me.
we are so dedicated to this though, and I don't know where you find the energy to continue to show up because the last session just wore us out.
It wore us out. It's expensive.
It is.
And, we drug our kids. They took their schoolwork. They sat in committee meetings and did their, homeschool work. Oftentimes,
wow.
They got really crafty and the dirty tricks that they were pulling. We would drive up to the Capitol because our family lives, it takes us over an hour to even get there. And then you have to navigate parking. You have to pay to park, then you have to get in. But anyway, sometimes we would get there only to find out that the bill wasn't even going to be heard in committee that day.
Yeah. A lot of dirty tricks. I mean, if they think it's something that we're going to be interested in, then they load it up with invited testimony so that they don't hear us until 10 o'clock at night. Yeah, I mean, you know, really, I tell Lynn all the time, mirror, mirror on the wall, I am my grandfather after all. He fought in World War I, and I remember as a child, he would say, that damn government, and now here I am, and I'm like, oh, he was right, and that was in 1970, and it's still that damn government. I mean, we've got to put the brakes on this. The growth is...
I think that what we're doing, which is shining a light on what's happening, is very important. And regardless of the fact that we're conservatives and, President Trump has been elected and that this is happening under his advisement, under his appointments, he's the one that has appointed Penny Schwinn. I think that what that means is we need to hold him accountable for that appointment and ask him to stop and consider it and listen to those of us that are trying to warn about this and warn that it will be detrimental to education in the United States.
So I am going to put a call to action out for a couple of things. And one is, call to action. All parents, please go to your school and either take your child out and educate them at home, not on a computer, not on a device where they are logged in with an ID, or go to your school and say, my child may not be on a one-to-one device. My child must be educated with a book, paper, pencil. And the law in Texas allows for the parent to do that. And if they say they can't because of, in Texas, the STAR test, you have the right to opt your child out of the STAR test. And the STAR test is about to go away. And then my next call to action is for everyone to get on social media, as you said, and tag the new president at Real Donald Trump and say, absolutely not, no Penny Schwinn, and frankly, no recommendation from Betsy DeVos and no recommendation from Brooke Rollins about education.
Or the Bushes, because we've I remember Jeb Bush was celebrating this appointment. So we don't want any of the Bush regime. We don't want the technocrats. We want people who are going to advance a classical model of education, not on devices. Agreed.
And so I think that you have to do it. And then we'll post several places, emails, addresses for the chief of staff. Susie Wiles needs to be bombarded with this. I mean, God bless her. It's not really her first day on the job, but the first official day on the job. And Susie Wiles needs to just be overloaded with the no Penny Schwinn. I mean, honestly, I'm not even crazy about Linda McMahon because she doesn't really, I mean, she may be a good businesswoman and we understand what that was. That was a, hey, let's appoint her so people can't attack, but behind the scenes, Brooke and Betsy DeVos will run the show. And my hope is that she has a mind of her own enough that she will, my hope is,
no, she's already said she's on the workforce train. She doesn't understand. That's always the default. If they don't understand what education is, then they sabotage with workforce training rather than giving them the foundation first before the workforce.
All right.
Well, and we'll talk another time about a bill that is being filed in Texas that is evaluating the value of certain degrees in college education, and that they would they're looking to do away with college education degrees that don't have a big return on the investment. And so basically what that does is that locks somebody in early to a pipeline for the workforce. That's really what that is. It has nothing to do with the personal return on the investment. It's, doctors and lawyers can still be, professionals, but we're coming after the rest of you.
Right.
So anyway, thank you so much, Lynn. Thank you. Tiffany will stay in touch. I know you and Lynn stay on it, and I just appreciate it. But let's hopefully people in other states will realize that this is something they need to be concerned about too, and that this will become a nationwide response to Penny Schwinn. Thank you
so much.
Thank you,
Thank
Tiffany,
you for
from freeyourchildren.com. You can find her there, and we'll load this and share it, and we'll see y'all soon. Thank you.